Hey, everybody. Evan Kirstel. Happy Monday morning. Excited for this chat with Kay Pasa and Arthur D. Little on the current state and future of the CPaaS marketplace. Guten Morgen, wie geht es Ihnen, Christoph?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Brilliant weather here in Vienna, so all good.
And really excited to have you here live from Vienna, one of my favorite cities in the world. Arthur D. Little, a really esteemed, this historic kind of management consultant company. Maybe introduce yourself and your role as a partner at ADL.
Thank you, Evan. Very happy to do so, and thanks for having us on this call today. So as said, I'm Christoph, partner within ADL's telecom, media, and technology practice. In that function, responsible for the work we do in the CPaaS and wider API segment. That covers working with CPaaS players themselves, working with telecom operators on their strategies, and nowadays more than ever working in the transaction space, so advising both on the buy side and on the sell side of many of the deals in the industry.
Fantastic. And we're really excited to dive into the incredible work and analysis you've done in the CPaaS arena. Also have Kevin Nethercutt from Kay Pasa, as we affectionately call the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. Kevin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Great to be with you again here, Evan. Appreciate the opportunity and excited to have Christoph join us here and talk about the telco space with CPaaS. We're now up to something like 60 members in the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, and
Wow.
So we're seeing great growth in the community and the space and the industry, and we love these sessions to help educate all of your listeners out there on all the possibilities with what they can do with their communications now. So excited to have another great conversation together.
Absolutely. So Christoph, tell us, where does Arthur D. Little, or ADL as we call it, view the current state of play for CPaaS? You know, where are we now and where are we headed? Opportunities, challenges as you see them?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I think it's a very interesting point in time to ask that question. I mean, we have had a lot of heat in the market, right, with the acquisitions of Kalera and Root Mobile really only being a couple of weeks old. So we see a market that, despite I would say recent doubts from the market, is stronger than ever. We really see a lot of traction from the CPaaS players themselves, gaining new deals, maneuvering the waters of SMS and other channels. And likewise, we see a strong push from the MNOs, the CSPs more generally, to be a more active part in that ecosystem and to find their role as we move from the more or less traditional SMS-centric CPaaS use cases into a wider set of either augmented or completely new use cases that really build on more advanced API access with regards to device locations, status, everything around security and authentication. So it's a really interesting time, and we strongly believe with the recent influx of capital, not only with these two acquisitions, but more generally, that there is a shift in the market, and that shift is very clearly towards a whole new set of channels and APIs.
That's fantastic. And give us a little of your backstory at Arthur D. Little. You're one of the only management consulting firms that really focuses on CPaaS, among other topics in telecom and 5G. I know that because I actually used to work for ADL about 25 years ago. But maybe describe for the audience here, how do you work with telcos and vendors and navigate this landscape? Because you've done some amazing work, and maybe you can provide some examples of the kind of work you've done. I have a link in the post to some of the assets for the viewers.
I'm happy to do so, even, and that's very interesting to speak to a former colleague. I wasn't aware of that. Look, indeed, we're deep in the CPaaS space, and there especially in the work with MNOs and larger wholesalers. And what we really thrive in is to help develop strategies for those players that help them gain sufficient ground in the industry, help them define partners not define, but more or less select partners and understand where those partners could bring value. Because I think one thing that is fundamentally understood is that what many CPaaS players achieved is one, obviously the aggregation play, and I think that's a given. Let's make a tick, but also is a wide exposure to the developer base, and that asset is something that takes time to build up, is difficult to build up, and therefore viewed by many players as a huge asset. So where ADL is coming in, we're looking into the ambition of operators, but CPaaS players alike, in where they want to go, what it would take to achieve that, and ultimately what could be organic or inorganic / a partnership M&A opportunities that are on the table. To make this very concrete, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a telecom provider, Southeast Asia centric, that felt, look, there's really a space for us to explore in the CPaaS market, and there, especially when we think about SMBs and mid-market customers. So what we do then, we come in, we help them understand the market, provide a strategy, and then also help them select the right partner with regards to reach, with regards to technical capabilities, with regards to ultimately the scalability of the approach that a partner has, and help bring this together and launch a new product into the market.
Fantastic. Well, it's a really interesting mission. And Kevin, what's your perspective on the state of the marketplace and its evolution? I know you talked a lot about 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Where are we now? Are we on 2.0? And what are the differences between each of these, let's say, versions of the industry that you like to talk about?
Yeah, no, I think we might be, generally speaking, at maybe 1.5. So, as we look at the market, and first of all, I think what Christoph has described is spot on. I mean, that's the whole reason that the Alliance exists, is because of a number of the trends that he just outlined. And the growth in those trends comes from the 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 story. And so essentially, if you think about it from a definition perspective, we look at 1.0 as really the early days of CPaaS, where APIs were novel, right? That's what allowed Uber to be Uber. They were able to consume an API that could initiate a message or a phone call out of an application, which never existed before. And so that really was the launch point, and very focused on developers. And so that was a big market, but there's only so many developers in the world that can take an API and really integrate that into a specific use case. 2.0 is really bringing in a broader base of enterprise users, where we look at low code and no code as really the engagement model. So now I don't have to be a hardcore developer. I can be managing a process inside my organization, whether that's HR, sales, logistics. So now it's much easier to go deeper and broader inside an organization by bringing communications into that real-time process. And then 3.0 is really then the verticalization of that, and more of a turnkey app type of experience. Also, clearly, AI will play a critical role as we move on to 3.0. And it's really 3.0 where we transition from a technology solution, where CPaaS is kind of the technology, to more of the enabling technology that really helps with the customer experience or the employee experience. And so 3.0 is really meeting the customer or the employee where they're at, and then providing them what they need real time to make their job easier, smoother, and particularly from a customer perspective, a much better experience.
Oh, interesting. Okay, great definition. And Christoph, why is this evolution even relevant to the telcos and MMNOs? Let me ask you that kind of basic question. Why not just focus on coverage and capacity and pipes and their bread and butter versus the CPaaS evolution or revolution?
Yeah, I think you partly gave the answer yourself already, but I think how Kevin outlined the steps is fundamental. It's exactly how we see the market in understanding why telcos move there. So with regards to operators, right? Obviously, they provide connectivity, and that's kind of their raison d'être. At the same time, obviously, they have a strong incentive and strong ambition to directly serve enterprises, directly engage with customers, and not become, as you said, a pipe. So in CPaaS, what has fundamentally happened is that a set of very smart players have disintermediated the classic telecom value chain, right? They have positioned them between the connectivity compute providers and the enterprise and said, look, I help you, enterprise, to really reach all your customers with very, very limited integration and coordination efforts on your side. Let me take that aggregation burden off you. Let me provide you with a smooth interface where you can already pre-type your marketing communication, where you can select the channel, etc. And I'll do the rest for you. Now, brilliant for the enterprise. For the telco, in reality, that means that they lose customer access. And we all know what that means, right, in terms of both financials, but also the stickiness you create with the customer if you're only a connectivity provider which brand doesn't even appear in many instances towards the enterprise. And I think by that, it is fundamental for telcos to act there. And we saw that phenomenon happen with A2P SMS, so 1.0, as Kevin outlined. And I think that's accepted, right? Even the CSPs understand they will have a hard time pushing out those aggregators. But as we move towards 2.0 and 3.0, I think it's fundamental that they don't let this happen again when it comes to a set of larger, more network-centric APIs, as we've discussed before: status, location, device proximity, etc. And I think that's why you see now a lot of interesting moves in the market. 2 years ago, we saw Ericsson moving for Vonage, right? I think a very, very telling move that has a similar picture of the industry in mind. So it is fundamental, just to make that point, for telcos to remain in a direct relationship with enterprises, developers alike, and therefore we see what we see, and we see that hunger, that appetite of the CSPs to have a different place in the value chain going forward.
And Kevin, yeah, I imagine that resonates with you pretty well, but you've been in the field a lot lately at industry events and speaking events like ITW, and I've lost track. So give us a report from the field, some of the takeaways from all those CPaaS and telco related events of the last few months where you've been so active.
Yeah, so I think the key term there is telco events. I think what we're seeing, what's unique, I'd say really since NWC back in February, is that the whole API story, whether that's telco APIs or a broader definition within CPaaS, has become a critical talking point. So you're seeing more sessions associated with that. You're seeing a broader set of individuals show up at these shows. I mean, if I think about ITW, even as recent as a couple of years ago, really you're there just to essentially barter minutes and messages back and forth and get the right rates and enjoy all the night events. But as I've attended the last 2 years, it's been interesting where there's a lot more solution related conversations. There's a lot more around, as a telco, as an MNO, how can I bring more value from my network? So when we look at the groups like Kamara, the OGI project from GSM, our own efforts here at K Plaza, telco APIs are playing, I believe, a very critical role moving forward. And to Christoph's point, I think in some regards, because of the fact that they own the network and they own the customer, they have this unique opportunity to really bring another level of value and kind of manage and control that. So it's interesting to say that I'm opening my network, but at the same time I'm controlling my future. Those seem counterintuitive in some ways, but in fact, by doing that, they will, I think, be able to drive a new revenue stream and a stickiness that only that they can deliver, which I think is really, really interesting.
Interesting indeed. And Christoph, talk about Project Kamara. Maybe explain it for those viewers who aren't aware. And what is the macro role of telco APIs in this new initiative? You know, is this a big leap forward, or is this more marketing and hype, would you say?
No, we think GSMA Kamara is a fundamental initiative to bring the industry forward, and we strongly believe it goes well beyond a hype. It is really the body under GSMA where telcos, equipment providers, CPaaS players by now come together and jointly work on making that new universe of APIs available. So at least the technical standardization of it, and driving the roadmap for the implementation. Because let's be very specific here. When we speak about a network API, it's in today's world vastly more complex to achieve a universal exposure of that API across different operators, as well as across enterprises ultimately. And it took some time for the industry, even in A2P SMS, to achieve that standardization, right? And now when we are speaking about network APIs, where complexity is significantly higher, it needs that standardization body that really takes ownership of developing those and ultimately assuring, at least to a certain level, a federated structure that can be exposed towards the wider market. And while we are quiet observers on the site in Kamara, we are very close with many of the members there, and especially the telcos, and we really see that there is significant moves forward. We see the willingness of all parties, telecom operators, CPaaS players, equipment providers. Let's not forget these, right? Ericsson, Nokia, Huawei, they will play a big role in exposing APIs of their solutions. We really see a big push there to bring this forward, and as Kevin said, help the industry to not only realize new use cases, but really transform the industry and allow for a completely new stream of revenue that is there. So it is well beyond the marketing hype. We think it's fundamental, and we're very happy to see that that many different players have joined and are actively contributing.
Great, exciting. And what percentage of this market space do you think the telcos can capture? What is your analysis or insights say over the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and obviously, when we say that market space, I want to be a bit more focused. So obviously, there is what we call traditional CPaaS space, where you have loads of established players. They have strong developer relationships. They have strong products for the mid-market and the larger enterprises. So on that traditional side, yes, we see acquisitions and we see operators here and there pushing their products. But I think there the overall consent is that for the CSPs in the short term, that will rather play not a major role, but a supporting role in the market. Where we think the cards are dealt completely new is on the more advanced APIs and everything that is related to what we discussed before in Kamara. there we truly see a lot of demand from hyperscalers, from MNCs, so multinational enterprises that have a high technical sophistication, to get direct access and to have non-aggregated products. Also because aggregation and federation in that network API space will be difficult. So by that logic and that increased demand for direct access, we think by definition that CSPs will play a more dominant role compared to the classic CPaaS domain. And also with the efforts, let's not forget, MWC was mentioned before. If you look into the large announcements around Open Gateway and everything that the CEOs commit, we not only see the demand side of the hyperscalers, the MNCs, asking the operators to open up, but we also see a clear push. I mean, the messages from the CEOs could not have been any more clear that this is where they want to go and that they want to play a significant part going forward. And that's why I think in one of our latest reports, we say that we're convinced that the telcos will have at least half of the market, if not 60%. And as of today, we think that number is represents at least the efforts that the CSPs are pushing in the topic.
That's super exciting. So let's talk about where the rubber hits the road, strategy and tactics. That's something you're a master of, Christoph, at Arthur D. Little. So give us, how should telcos, in a nutshell, establish a stronger presence in this marketplace, and maybe some actions or ideas they should potentially look at?
Yeah, it is exactly that question, right? How do you monetize that asset that you have, which is an access to network features and APIs? And I think there, the first question the operators ask themselves, and you can see that in many articles being published, but also speeches and events, is whom do I actually want to serve? Am I planning to directly go to market and sell to the largest players out there, the hyperscalers, the MNCs, kind of part of the mid-market, especially in the US? We see that tremendously with tremendous focus. So really play a direct role, sell to these, and I think that's kind of the obvious, right? They will have inbounds, and as we said before, enterprises are looking for non-aggregated products, so there will be parts. The more interesting question to us is, how can operators also capture the demand of the indirect channels? And it was you before who said, look, there's only that many developers around that you can target. We think that actually finding the right setup, the right platform, the wrappers, the SDKs that are needed to effectively address ISVs, so independent software vendors, ASPs, application service providers, and the larger set also of enterprise developers, that's really where the change in business model for operators needs to happen, because that's something they don't typically do, right? Hardly any telco products today are built in a way that developers pick it up. There's no marketplaces as such. There's no developer portals. There's limited experience in the operators to define software development kits, to provide development environments, to even go on GitHub and have their reviews there and their codes. So that's the fundamental shift that telcos need to perform to be able to also capture a share of that indirect market. And that's where often the question comes in. Do we think that this is something that is natural to us? Do we want to do it organically? Do we grow it in-house? Do we bring in the right people? Do we hire from the Twilios and others? Or do we go out in the market and find the right puzzle pieces? And I think Tata and now also Proximus Bix, they made their bet, right? And it's going to be very interesting to see how others will follow. But for us, when we speak to operators, when we strategize, that's really the question. Where do I get this indirect access to the market via ISVs, ASPs, etc.? How do I make that work, and how do I need to transform?
Lots of challenges ahead, which is one reason, Kevin, we have the CPaaS event coming up in Amsterdam in September. It's not just another trade show, it's a real meeting of the minds in this industry to gather, to network, to share ideas, to build partnerships. Tell us about the event and how's the planning coming along?
No, we're excited to be hosting the community in Amsterdam, September 18th through the 20th. A lot of what we're planning is based on our State of CPaaS report that we released a few weeks ago. And a lot of what Christoph just described will be key tracks within the conference. We see the telcos, the MNOs, the carriers, the CSPs as a critical growth engine as we look at the industry growing from 16 billion to 100 billion by the end of the decade. And so we'll see significant growth for the current CPaaS players, but there's this new opportunity for carriers to come in and play a large role, both with their telco APIs as well as the broader, CPaaS players that they can become as well in their individual regions. And so as we look at the conference, we've tried to apply what we've learned in the report and bring in all of the most knowledgeable people on these categories that we can. And so on the 18th, we'll start after lunch focused on telcos. So Monday will be our telco day, where we will have dedicated roundtables and panels and keynotes around the growth of the carrier specific to telco APIs. We are a Camara member, and our show is called CASA 23, so the CPaaS Acceleration Summit Amsterdam. And so we are an official venue or event for the Camara group. And so we're welcoming that community to come in on that Monday, where we talk about telco APIs, the role of carriers, what they can play at the higher level, at a CPaaS level. And then we'll also talk quite a bit about the future of messaging. It's a core to CPaaS today, but we see that really changing as we go from 1.0 to 3.0. There's a lot of opportunity there to really grow the industry and the opportunities, particularly for carriers, as the initiators in the network for messaging. Tuesday will be the core day. We'll have some wonderful keynotes in the morning, and then we'll break into 3 tracks in the afternoon, where we'll cover key topics like AI and its role in communications. As we transition from UCaaS to customer experience, employee experience, that'll be a key role. So we'll have a number of UCaaS players coming in, sharing their roadmaps and the future of how we can help in those communications. And then we do believe, again, that the carriers will play a key role in this is the SME market. So what is that pathway to the end user as we look at that? And then Wednesday will be kind of a members or invite only day, where we'll have some in-person roundtables for CSPs and vendors. We're launching a number of working groups, and so there'll be an opportunity to come in as members and pick the topic that you're passionate about and help move that forward. So we're expecting well over 200 people. We've got this wonderful venue. It's 100 years old, and so it's got a ton of character. And
100 years old. Come on, this is Amsterdam. I expect
that's
at least
new for
500
Amsterdam.
years old.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. For us Americans, it feels old.
I feel old, but thanks so much. Everyone, pencil it in. It's going to be one of the most interesting events in the very busy event season this year. Until then, we have some R&R ahead of us. Happy Pioneer Day in Colorado, Kevin. Is that today's holiday?
Here in Utah, yes. So
Utah, wrong
today,
state, but yeah.
That's right. Yeah, no, today is the day that Brigham Young came over the hill and discovered Salt Lake City. And so that's a state holiday here with parades and rodeos and all sorts of.
I'm sorry you're working on
activities.
Pioneer Day, but what about you, Christoph? I hope there's some rest and relaxation, maybe in the mountains for you this summer, or anything fun planned?
Definitely. August is kind of the holiday season in Europe, right? So there's always a couple of days that are really enjoyable on the beach somewhere. So that's going to come up. And likewise, looking very much forward to the events. We discussed Amsterdam. There's plenty of interesting industry forums coming up, and really can only recommend to join, because it's the discussion really that drives this topic forward, right? So I think
it is indeed. Well, thank you so much for sharing, all of your insights and analysis, guys. And thanks for watching, everyone. We appreciate you and your time, and we'll meet you in